What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of The Spectrum Show. My name is Spencer, and this is Jackson, and we have another incredible episode for you all. And let me tell you something, this episode's got a lot of force packed into its punches, particularly from the Knuckles.
That's right, Spencer. In this episode, we'll be doing our first ever throwback review and our first ever TV series review. Specifically, we'll be covering a classic Star Wars film, which recently saw its 25th anniversary re-release in theaters, and a show that dropped on Paramount Plus just last month.
Also, I forgot to mention this last time, but in case you were wondering why I was so very sunburnt, that's because I was participating in the Special Olympics last month, and with that comes a big shout out to my partners from Lexington High School, Robert and Madison. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get back to our first Spectrum of Opinions discussion, so don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Welcome back, everyone. We're the cast of The Spectrum Show, and we're moving on to our first Spectrum of Opinions discussion. This time we've got a throwback review for you all. We'll be reviewing the 1999 film Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace in honor of its 25th anniversary re-release in theaters, and discussing whether or not the widespread criticism it faced still holds up in the modern day. So we should start with a recap of the film itself.
Yes, that is an excellent idea. So Sean, I'm going to have you take it away because you're here and you're only going to be here for this segment. So
okay, Star Wars Episode 1 follows Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn and his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, played by Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor, as they try to negotiate a trade dispute and also in the process get caught up in a coup that is happening on the planet of Naboo and encounter the child who will eventually become Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, and eventually unearth the looming threat of the Sith. And so, as for what we think of it, I think Spencer should start off, given he has probably the most unconventional take out of all of us.
I would probably agree with that because I actually, as being a 2000s kid, I sort of grew up on the prequels, actually.
So did I.
Fair enough. But yeah, I think I think this film got too much hate for the time. Like, yes, it wasn't as good as it could have been, but I don't think it's actually that bad, honestly, because it's before they even know any of this stuff about the original trilogy. I mean, yes, there are some aspects of there, and like Yoda and Jabba the Hutt and stuff like that, but there's really, like, it's enough to stand on its own, but also can build up the Star Wars story over time. And I think the acting in it is, well, some of the acting in it, I should say, maybe not all of it, but some of it, particularly from the human actors, I will say, and not the puppeteer stuff, it was pretty solid, honestly. And I think we can all agree that the choreography was among the best out of any Star Wars film for the fight scenes.
I have thoughts of that on my own, but Jackson?
I think The Phantom Menace is an okay movie, and it's very funny, not always in ways it intends to be.
That's fair.
My take on it is, I do think the hate was overblown, and especially what a lot of the actors went through in the wake of that movie was very uncalled for, especially Ahmed Best. He's talked about that a lot and his experience. He's the actor for Jar Jar.
He also plays Jedi in The Mandalorian, if you've seen that.
And he's talked a bit about how the response to Jar Jar really put him in a bad place, and that is unconscionable. I think we can all agree on that. That being said, The Phantom Menace is just, like, not a very well-told story in general. Like, on a technical level, its pacing is all off, the acting is inconsistent at best, and the plot can be kind of unclear about what the stakes of the conflict even are, and the characters are thinly drawn at the best of times.
Some more than others,
I agree that some are, better than others,
like,
but
Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were definitely the best too, I think.
We'll get into that. Well, I mean, we're getting into plot and characters now, so all right.
Yeah, and I will say, on the subject of characters and unnecessary hate, Jake Lloyd had so much unnecessary hate, I think.
I agree. His performance wasn't the best, but he was just a kid, and
exactly.
I think if you're really going to, pile on a kid for not being good at acting, like, most kids aren't good at acting, and I'm not saying that makes it good. I'm saying that means, cut him some slack.
Exactly. That's exactly. And the fact that he got, wasn't he up for a Razzie too? And that's really unfortunate too.
Yeah, no.
The Razzies seem to be kind of.
The Razzies, like, I can laugh at a well-placed Razzie every once in a while, but sometimes they're just really mean-spirited.
100% agree, but that's not the point here.
I think my point about Jake Lloyd is I want to make is he was better in Jingle All the Way. Watch that movie.
I think that's probably true.
The Arnie Christmas movie.
Yes.
Anyway,
I like that one too.
Anyway, but back onto Star Wars. You want to talk about the characters?
Yeah, I'm not going. There's a lot that's been said, and I've, obviously, and it's been many years since this movie's been released. There have been, reviews that have defined where film criticism has gone for most of YouTube about the prequels, and I won't really rehash those criticisms, but one of the main criticisms I would levy is that the film has kind of a focus problem where it's not really sure who it's about. Like, ostensibly, our main characters are Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, but they're kind of thinly drawn, aren't really particularly well characterized, don't have a lot of good banter, and it's really hard to describe what they're about beyond vague, like vague things they believe.
Yeah,
and
I could see that.
They're just not very well realized, and if they were, I actually have written a version of this movie in my head that's set mostly on Tatooine and is mostly about Anakin and Obi-Wan's relationship. But this isn't me rewriting the movie; it's me reviewing the movie.
Fair enough. It's like what you would have done differently.
And we have to talk about the Gungan in the room, Jar Jar.
good terminology.
Somehow not the worst racial stereotype in this film.
Honestly,
if I may, I think people tend to forget this, even though his presence was mostly felt in the first one. He was in the second and third one too, but I think
parts.
But just in small parts. But I will say, in 2 specifically, I know this is about 1, but 2, he was there. He had kind of more of a purpose because he was the one who gave Palpatine the
emergency power.
So he's there, but he's not there at the same time.
Don't you see? It was all part of Darth Binks' plan all along.
Exactly.
Anyways,
I don't think he was as bad as some of the out oversized criticism, but
I'd agree.
He's in the movie too much, even when it really doesn't make sense for him to be in certain scenes.
Fair enough.
And yeah, it's just a very awkward performance, and just I don't really. I get that these are kids' movies, and I get that George Lucas wants to keep them very lighthearted and such, but it just feels like we're really straining against the actual tone of the movie just to include this guy.
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting character choice, I will say.
I actually like him when he's in other stuff. Did you know the actor actually won, I think it was an Annie Award for his appearance on Robot Chicken as the character?
Interesting. I don't watch Robot Chicken, but that's really cool to know. A little fun fact for you all in the comments. But
the plot, and the story, the way it's told, it's not really clear what these trade routes and their taxation really means to the Trade Federation.
Let alone what they are. And
it's not really clear what effect the blockade is having on Naboo and what we're supposed to feel about that. There isn't really a scene where, in New Hope, where Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen are burned to death, and you understand, the Empire's bad news. Here, it's played very fast and loose.
That's actually a very good point. I didn't ever stop to consider that, but I will say, moving on to a different part of the movie, there are some standout scenes, I will say.
I mean, true. I mean, a lot of people really do like the fight scenes, and I guess that means we should be talking about the technical side of things now.
Yes, and if we're talking really technical, literally and figuratively, you got to mention the pod racing scene. That's a really unique addition, I will say.
Honestly, I do really like the pod racing scene.
I honestly agree. The pod racing is the best part of the movie for me. It's a really fun addition to Star Wars lore. The designs of the pod racers, the pods themselves are fantastic, as are the designs of the pod racers, who all look hilarious in various ways.
If there's one thing that the Star Wars
if
there's one thing the Star Wars movies are always at the top of their game for, it's really cool and weird looking aliens
and vehicles,
and kind of a sort of junker space aesthetic.
Yeah, I love that. Jakku, for instance.
I love Sebulba's pod racer specifically.
It does look really cool.
The fact that its engines are so massive and designed specifically to ram into other pod, that's really good character writing.
It really is, honestly, and he's a side character. It's the side characters ended up being some of the favorites.
You convey so much of his personality just through the design of his pod racer,
it's really
and that's
cool.
genuinely impressive.
Honestly, the pod race reminded me of one of my favorite little unknown movies. It's a Japanese movie called Redline,
Never heard of it.
Which has a very similar space junker racing across the desert aesthetic, but with traditional cars.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But if another standout scene that I think has to be brought up because it has to be just for the sake of reviews.
The lightsaber fight.
Not exactly. I was actually the whole final battle in general because the way it transitions from like the space fighting to like the on ground like laser fighting to the lightsabers, it's like all the transitions, like it made sense the way they did them, honestly.
I think it was about as clean for what it was, though I feel like, having 4 climaxes does kind of lead to a bit of clutter.
Yeah, but
I do like the overall decision to try and go, this is like a final battle in a kind of smaller war.
Yeah.
So we might as well show all fronts of the final battle. Because
that exactly it right there.
I feel like the Gungan stuff was kind of the weakest link in all of it, though.
But I mean, true.
Oh yeah, the Gungans were part of the final battle, and
my favorite stuff was the lightsaber fight and Anakin attacking the Separatist mothership.
And with that lightsaber fight, if I may, Darth Maul.
Honestly,
he was like, say what you want about. He didn't have much dialogue or anything, but he was like a Sith we had never seen before at the time. If you think about it, like he was agile, acrobatic. Like we had not expected a fight to be like that.
I mean, I can appreciate that. Like technically, what they're doing is very intensive and stuff. I feel like it was more focused on the choreography than really the emotion of the fight. That's my main problem with the final duel, in that like the emotional beats aren't as strong as even some of the less well choreographed stuff from the original trilogy.
Yeah, but the choreography is just masterfully done, I will say.
Maul is an intimidating presence for how little he's characterized.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Palpatine without being Palpatine, if that makes sense.
One of my favorite moments is when he just kind of offhandedly like sends an object crashing into a door with his force throw,
like
it's so casual for him, like he's barely even trying.
Yeah, it's like he's just, but it also makes the fight look so much more fluid.
Yeah, no, like with a lot of uses of the Force, it's super deliberate, but that just makes him feel intimidating because like, oh wow, this guy's just kind of using it and it's not even a big deal for him.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like he'll do anything to win, basically, and at the first point he does kind of get the upper hand, because let's just point out, for those of you who haven't seen this movie, spoiler alert, Qui-Gon dies. Like that was like, because that was kind of out of left field thing at the time, if you think about it.
I mean, it's sort of like a callback to the Obi-Wan death in A New Hope. Like there's a lot of scenes in the prequel trilogy that deliberately harken back to moments in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
That's actually the rationale behind a lot of weird decisions. And ultimately, the prequel trilogy was never going to measure up to the original trilogy, and a lot of just too much expectations. But there is some stuff there. Some of it I enjoyed more ironically than intended, and overall, I'm not really going to say it's a good movie, but I'm not going to say I didn't enjoy myself.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say something I noticed towards the end of the movie, like right before the final scene, in like Palpatine was literally at Qui-Gon's funeral. That's like ominous and demon.
I love Ian McDiarmid. He's like he holds it all together for me.
Yeah, and he was not even Chancellor at the time. It was Chancellor Valoran at the time, I believe.
Yeah.
I love how the entire behind the scenes thing of the movie is his plan to become Chancellor, even though it makes very little sense in context.
Yeah, but it worked out for him in the long run. But anyhow, is there anything else we need to talk about, or are we good to move on?
I mean, I think we covered plenty of territory here.
They're literally telling us to the back room. They're just like, guys, wrap it up.
Let's try spinning. That's a good trick.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think we're about done here. So
yeah, I'd say we're done. I want to get my last thoughts out though.
Yes,
overall, yeah, like I said, it's not the best put together movie,
but it's
and
fun.
It has showed its age in a bit, but I do like it. It's fun. It's a fun time.
Agreed.
The novelty of seeing it in the theater made it worthwhile.
Absolutely, 100% agree.
I agreed with a bit more, criticism towards its story structure, characters, but all the prequel memes have ruined my brain.
It was, but say it or love it or hate it, this was made to be seen in the theater.
And if you're looking for some, good Star Wars stuff, you've been wanting for that. Since this is our May episode.
We have these guys as well.
Try out some of the Disney Star Wars comics. I promise these are actually good, even if you're not really the biggest on Disney Wars.
Yeah, but anyway, I think we're about done here. So we're gonna take a little bit of a break, and when we get back here, we're gonna get into our first ever series review. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We are the cast of The Spectrum Show, and we are moving on to our second Spectrum of Opinions discussion, this time focusing on the Sonic the Hedgehog spin-off series that recently debuted on Paramount Plus, Knuckles. So, Jackson, what are your Spectrum of Opinions on this series?
So first off, I have to say there was no baby microwave in this one, unfortunately. I was looking forward to that.
Huh?
Sonic comics are weird. Anyways, my overall thoughts on this show are... I honestly wasn't a big fan of it. I was hoping for more from this.
I was too, to be honest with you.
I had heard a kind of mixed response from my friends, but I was like hoping in advance that it was going to be a bit of a better time than they were letting on, but
yeah.
I guess I was wrong. There are 2 episodes that really are the exceptions to this. I will talk about them when we get to the discussion, but the show overall was not really my cup of tea.
Yeah.
I did not really enjoy it that much.
Yeah, I thought this show personally was like, it serves well as a standalone series. Like, it's a good series. It's not a good Sonic series, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, because I'll save my score for it after, because we're hoping I can give a score for it.
It really doesn't help that the show is barely about Knuckles when it's called Knuckles.
Exactly, and it really could have been, there could have been more of a focus like on this whole Knuckles aspect. But let's get into the story of it, because
so the story of the show is set right after the events of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which you've probably seen. In that, it's following that movie. Knuckles is still living with Sonic, Tails, and their new human family.
The Wachowskis.
But ends up doing some major property damage to the point where they decide to ground him. But Knuckles ends up coming up with a plan. He decides to leave and
help Wade complete his
goals. Wade, the comedy relief sheriff from the first 2 movies.
Yeah, he's trying to compete in a bowling tournament. Yes, you heard that right. Right? And he's got to get to Reno, which is kind of near the Vegas area, I believe.
Our director, Preston, would like us to mention that the bowling depiction in this show is very bad, and he does not like it as someone who is very into bowling.
Yes, our director, Preston, is very into bowling at this point. He's been bowling for most of his life, and he was not pleased by it, let's just say. But I will say, I know if bowling and Sonic sounds like a strange combination, yeah, that's because it is.
It just is. Yeah.
Yeah, it just is. It's like, because but I will say, there are, despite all the problems this show has, which there's quite a few, honestly.
Many.
But there still are some very good things about this, to be fair. There are some good things about it. Do you want to start with the bad stuff or go bad and go good?
Let's start with the good stuff, actually.
Yeah, so
first things first, you can really tell the first episode was directed by Jeff Fowler. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, and I will say, the CGI much better than I anticipated it to be. It's still actually...
Knuckles looks good, Sonic and Tails look wrong.
I mean, they were accurate enough, I'd say.
Yeah, it makes sense because they only had them for 1 episode. Doesn't make sense to spend too much on models for them for this budget.
But they were more accurate than they could have been, I will say.
But yeah, first episode is easily the show's like most consistent. Yeah, it's the one that focuses the most on Knuckles for one. Yeah. And Fowler's directing style from the first 2 Sonic movies is very much present.
Absolutely.
You see, it's a very good like balance of comedy and actually somewhat serious stuff with Knuckles' arc at the start of this.
And you know what I actually and say we want about, even though Knuckles didn't really have much of a presence, I'm gonna use this as a segue. All the actors in the show, they all did they did a fine job of what they had, honestly.
Elba gives the best performance of the show, which is a shame to me because he is in it the least compared to all the actors.
Yeah, and Adam Pally was fun because that's what he is in the other movies.
He's fun. I think he was a bit more grating in this than he was in the first 2 movies, personally.
And there's little do people know, there are actually some pretty big names in this, like Wade's father is actually played by one of the people.
Cary Elwes, who is the star of
The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Ellie Taylor from Ted Lasso and Kid Cudi played GUN agents, which is pretty fun to see, honestly, because Kid Cudi doesn't get a lot of acting roles, honestly.
I honestly think he was one of the better actors in this.
And considering he's a musician, too, that said a lot, too.
I think it says a lot, but not in the way you're implying. But, okay.
I wasn't implying.
So,
anyway.
Another positive, episode 4 is the best episode of the show, and it's not even close.
Yeah, I mean that's the same with a lot of the Marvel shows too. To be
Jorma Taccone of Lonely Island fame directed episode 4.
He did a great job.
You also might recognize him as the voice of 60s Spider-Man in Into the Spider-Verse.
But I will.
Yeah, but he directed episode 4, and even though it's the episode with the least Knuckles in the entire series, it's
fantastic.
my favorite.
And honestly, that episode, I tried to take a break after that episode because that was an episode where I was just like, what the hell just happened?
The reveal that Knuckles just casually smacked Iblis.
Yeah, so that include him without really including him, if that makes sense.
I love how it's like a Sonic 06 reference in the same way. It's like, and Knuckles beat this guy. It wasn't even a challenge.
But still, like, I'm glad that they're referencing other material, too. That's great.
Speaking of good performances, Christopher Lloyd is in it for a short amount of time, but I really like him as Patrick Mack.
Which I was not expecting him to be in this series, honestly. And he did a fantastic job. Plus it's Christopher Lloyd, so what do you want?
Honestly, I wish more episodes of the show were about Pachacamac and Wade interacting because they have a fun dynamic.
I mean, and Christopher Lloyd's he's great in everything he's in.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the one thing I will say there is one thing that definitely upset me with this show. Because with the last 2 Sonic movies, we had fantastic post-credit scenes. This one, even though it kind of wrapped up an element of the story, it didn't really set anything up. And I think even Jeff Fowler said, like, this was supposed to be a good lead way into Sonic 3, which is you guys know we're going to be reviewing.
This feels like what Secret Invasion was to the Marvels. That's all I'm going to say.
That's actually a very good analogy, even though I kind of enjoyed Secret Invasion, but like...
Yeah.
But
like,
I will say...
They were hyping Secret Invasion up as, like, this is what you need to watch before you see the Marvels. But it doesn't even affect the movie. Talos could have just shown up in the Marvels and nothing would have been different.
But let me just say this. I feel like once we get to Sonic 3, I have a prediction for Sonic 3. I think Sonic 3 is going to start right where Knuckles ends. That would actually make a lot more sense.
I feel like that would work, or at least is pretty close to where Knuckles ended.
Yeah, or at least he's almost there, and somehow Shadow comes out or Eggman comes out of nowhere. But I feel like the series could have been better. But say what you want about it, I had a freaking flying good time with it.
I'm gonna be honest, I was tuning out by the last 2 episodes.
That's fine. But
let's get into the stuff we didn't actually like that much as well.
I thought some of the story elements personally like a little unnecessary. Like I feel like they could have been handled a bit better. Like especially Wade's stories. Like I think
I'm shocked that the driving thrust of Wade's story feels like episode 3 is not a bad. It's not a bad time to introduce the reason for why he's doing this, but at the same time, it simultaneously feels too late because it's only a 6-episode show.
It could have been better with like 8. I think Ahsoka proved that 8 episodes is the sweet spot. Honestly,
like you need this needed 8 or 10 episodes personally.
Yeah, like maybe 9. 9 would have been.
9 could have also worked, but yeah, it doesn't help that Cary Elwes' character is a kind of lame like final boss. Though speaking of lame final bosses, I did not like the actual villain of the show either.
Yeah, I mean the GUN agents were actually better villains than the actual villain. And
the GUN agents were better than both villains. And
I will say and that was Roy McMahon from Game of Thrones, I believe, playing the buyer, I believe.
That's a Game of Thrones guy? Damn.
Yeah, he was from Game of Thrones, so that was kind of a big get, I guess, but it was unfortunately wasted. But
yeah, it feels like casting a really prolific drama actor as a Marvel villain from a forgettable MCU movie.
Yeah, and I will
Matt
say,
Mikkelsen.
Yeah, true. But anyhow, I will say the one thing I don't remember the actors who play Wade's family. I don't remember their names, but I will say, Wade's mother was. You could see where she was coming from, but didn't really help that much. She was just kind of there.
She was fine. She didn't really have much of a presence on the plot.
But I will say
the fact they have her say Knuckles with a CH felt a little too much, I'm gonna say.
Yeah, but I'll be the first to admit, as someone who knows a lot of people in the Jewish community, I will say I wonder if they actually had people who were Jewish in production, because
I had to assume they did,
or because I mean I'm here for it personally.
Yeah.
But I will say like as someone who knows that, it's like I don't know if I want to say it like that, but like it's because you know what, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I know people who know better.
Can we move on to Wade's sister now and how she's the worst character in the show?
Let's just say, yeah, I I thought she was alright at first, but then after a little while, she is one of the least likable people. She's like a Chase from Runaways, where he starts out as like one of the least likable people.
How are you bringing? I did not expect you to bring up Runaways.
You know what I'm talking about.
I could talk so much about Runaways, but okay, we got to move on.
But my point is she's just not very likable.
She doesn't even have the charm Chase does. I haven't seen the show.
That is a good point.
I haven't seen the show. I've only read the comic, but I'm saying
Fair enough.
I feel like the entire thing with her was to make her intentionally unlikable, but at the same time she's kind of given a bit of a glorifying presence in the last 2 episodes that she really doesn't earn.
But that being said, she is technically superior to Wade if you think about it. She just rubs it in his face, you know?
Yeah.
She's an FBI, he's local sheriff, you know?
I would still trust Wade more in a given situation.
Wow, that's saying something.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be real.
And plus, it's Adam Pally. What do you want?
But he gives a better performance than her, and I don't even really like his performance in this show.
Yeah, but hey, at least we don't have too much longer to wait till Sonic 3. And we still have no trailer, for gosh sake.
I'm very hopeful for Sonic 3. I feel like part of the worry a lot of people had was this show kind of impacting how Sonic 3 would look.
I don't think so.
The best episode, one of the best episodes being by the director of Sonic 1 and 2 and Sonic 3, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, and
my worries are alleviated.
Yeah, and I will say, the one thing I am worried about this, and I think even actors from the Sonic franchise said 3 is not the last one too. So they're gonna keep going with this. Jeff Fowler definitely wants to keep going.
I am currently waiting for Sega to just announce a Persona movie and announce this is going to be a cinematic universe now.
Well,
they're going to do it. They're going to do this.
Even if they're all separate universes,
yeah.
I'd be more okay with that, honestly.
They're going to do a Persona thing. They're going to do something with Yakuza probably. I can see Sega going okay, these movies are popping off really hard. We need more movies.
But at the same time, they know Sonic sells. So
yeah.
So they might as well keep that off to the side and keep maybe everything can be its own independent universe.
I feel like they're going to cross over at some point, but that's for later. That's for much later in the future.
You know what I would love to see, though? You guys remember the Worlds Unite comics, right?
Oh, God.
Have you even read those?
I've read bits and pieces of that crossover. I don't think Capcom is very interested in making a Mega Man movie for that purpose.
Or at least because it hasn't been doing very well lately, from what I remember.
The IDW, it's moved to IDW a while ago, but the comics are kind of in a delay state right now. So they're not really coming out regularly.
Well,
that's less the fault of the comics and more of it. IDW Comics is currently burning down.
So hopefully they can finish the stories for Sonic at that point.
My assumption is Sonic gets sold to Boom Studios within 2 years.
Well, we'll see. And hopefully, and the thing I'm really worried about with this universe in general, last point I'm going to make here, with the whole Paramount possibly merging with Sony, I think it's more than likely going to happen at this point.
I think that was confirmed. It's not going to happen.
Oh, it's not going to happen?
I'm pretty sure it was.
I mean, maybe I think I heard. Well, we're going to fact check that. And we'll put it in the description.
We'll put it in the description. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anything else, or are we good to wrap up?
I think we're good. I don't recommend Knuckles personally.
Yeah, I think if you want something that's not great but is a fun watch, maybe. Hey, so
I would just watch Sonic 2 again.
Yeah. So I think we're about done here. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll wrap up the show for this today, pretty much. And then, yeah, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
Well, Jackson, I think we had another phenomenal episode today. But before we go any further, we have a couple of things we'd like to bring up. Because, first off, we'd like to start off by saying happy Memorial Day weekend is coming up at the time of this recording. And we'd like to give a huge shout out to all the veterans who we have connections to. And one of them is actually right here on set. Our camera person, Marcia, actually, she is a military veteran herself. So a massive shout out to her and all the other people who have veterans in their family, which I think is pretty much all of us, I think.
We hope you have a good barbecue on Memorial Day weekend as well.
That too. That too, of course. But yeah, a big shout out to all the veterans who are serving this country and doing amazing, amazing things for us. And also, before we go any further, we'd like to make a quick announcement saying that Summer of Spectrum is next month. We start the whole thing with a live stream next month, where we're going to be doing, on June 10th, mind you, June 10th at 4 p.m., we're going to be doing a live stream reacting to both the Xbox Game Showcase and Apple's WWDC. So we're going to be in it for the long haul, but it'll be a heck of a time regardless. And we're also going to be starting to post some YouTube short content as well, because we want to give you guys a little behind-the-scenes insight as well as to what and so you can see how we do things at the Spectrum Show set. So, Jackson, if you'd like to take it away.
All right. We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did making it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and a friendly comment. Share this video around to your family and friends. Subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on with the bell next to the subscribe button so you never miss any of the content we put out. We upload these main episodes at the end of every month.
Be sure to follow us on Threads, Instagram, and Twitch. Join our Discord server because it's now officially out, and become a member on Patreon for just $1 a month. So that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time,
Good night, everybody.